This administration is shameful. Y'all are a disgrace.
We're watching the fall of this administration.
Yeah,
what I think is interesting about this case, this story, is you can be highly legal and...
Tensions are escalating in the small town of Dolton, Illinois, as a heated political dispute between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and Trustee Kiana Beller has taken center stage. The community is caught in a whirlwind of controversy, with accusations, power struggles, and intense debates surrounding the leadership of the local government. The heart of the conflict lies in Trustee Beller's outspoken criticism of Mayor Henyard's management. Specifically, her perceived lack of transparency. Beller has become the voice for those who believe that the town's leadership needs to be more open and accountable, accusing Henyard of creating an environment where crucial information is withheld from the public. Her call for greater honesty and clarity has ignited passionate discussions among the residents of Dolton, as well as within the town's board meetings, which have become increasingly tense. The divide between the mayor and her critics is growing. Supporters of Mayor Henyard argue that she is doing the best she can under difficult circumstances, pointing to the challenges faced by the town. On the other hand, those who align with Beller contend that a lack of transparency is undermining trust in the local government and that the town deserves better leadership as the conflict deepens. Dolton's once routine board meetings have transformed into high-stakes events, drawing large audiences eager to witness the next dramatic development. The community is divided, with some standing behind Beller's demand for accountability, while others remain firm in their support of Henyard's leadership. What's clear is that the political landscape in Dolton is undergoing a significant shift, with emotions running high and neither side willing to back down. The outcome of this intense struggle for power and responsibility will undoubtedly leave a lasting impact on the town's future and could shape its political dynamics for years to come.
in concern, Tiffany Henyard addressed her constituents.
The Thornton Township Supervisor and Dolton Mayor invited the community to Township Talk, where she responded to our report about her use of the township credit card by mentioning...
The tense political atmosphere in Dolton, Illinois, reached a boiling point during a recent village board meeting when Trustee Kiana Beller turned her attention to the village's finances, specifically expenditures related to Mayor Tiffany Henyard's trip to Dubai. Beller, known for her vocal criticism, raised concerns about the apparent financial mismanagement surrounding Henyard's management style. She questioned whether the village had a set budget for such expenditures, citing the lack of transparency and the possibility that the mayor had exceeded the financial limits. The room fell silent as Beller pressed her point, refusing to let the issue go unanswered. In response, the town's lawyer explained that the expenses were covered by a special event fund meant for occasions like the mayor's trip, and that they did not require prior board approval, as long as the individual bills remained under $5,000. Beller, skeptical of the explanation, pressed further, asking about the apparent division of the event invoices into smaller amounts to keep each under the $5,000 threshold. The lawyer admitted that while the expenses didn't need pre-approval, the board could still approve the invoices retroactively, which raised even more questions for Beller. Not satisfied with the lawyer's response, Beller voted against the motion, arguing that the process appeared opaque and lacked accountability. She criticized the procedure as flawed, claiming it left little room for meaningful discussion or transparency. In contrast, Henyard defended the practice, stating that the costs were within the approved budget and dismissing Beller's concerns as nothing more than unnecessary drama. According to Henyard, the mayor's approach to resolving issues behind closed doors had always been effective and preferable to airing internal disputes publicly. Beller, however, emphasized the importance of open communication and the need for accountability, suggesting that such matters should be discussed privately before making them public. This stance, however, did little to ease the mounting tension in the room. As Beller's words echoed through the room, the audience responded with murmurs of agreement, heightening the sense of unease and further deepening the divide between the two leaders. The clash between Henyard and Beller was far from over, and the political rift in Dolton was only widening.
There will be no comments, there will be anything, there will be me addressing you guys.
The real issue at the heart of Mayor Tiffany Henyard's increasingly tumultuous administration is not just the isolated financial controversies that have emerged, but the broader governance approach, or rather, the lack thereof, that she has demonstrated. Henyard's leadership has been consistently marked by questionable spending practices, a troubling lack of financial transparency, and a disregard for accountability. This has fueled mounting frustration and resentment among Dolton residents, And many believe that these issues run much deeper than the surface-level financial disputes. The concerns surrounding the administration's budgeting practices only scratch the surface of the broader systemic problems at play. During a recent meeting, Henyard's presentation of the village's budget raised serious alarms among residents and board members alike. One key moment of contention occurred when a resident, Baylor, expressed frustration over the budget being presented at an inconvenient time, 3:26 p.m., which left the board with little time to properly review its contents. Baylor criticized Henyard for her lack of consideration for the community, pointing out that residents hadn't been given the opportunity to examine the budget before the board was expected to make a decision. She called for a more detailed and itemized breakdown of the budget, something that had been standard practice in previous years. However, Henyard seemed more focused on rushing the process rather than addressing these valid concerns. This lack of transparency and a dismissive attitude towards meaningful review only added fuel to the fire, revealing a much deeper issue within her administration. Henyard's handling of finances and the dismissive way in which she has handled legitimate concerns suggests a broader disregard for the very values of openness and accountability that are supposed to define local government. Perhaps the most glaring aspect of Henyard's leadership is the stark contrast between her current behavior and her past role as a trustee. When she was a trustee, Henyard prided herself on being meticulous about the village's finances, scrutinizing every detail and questioning even the smallest discrepancies. She once insisted that the village increase funding for tree care despite financial constraints due to constant complaints from residents about overgrown trees. She was known for her sharp attention to detail, making it all the more perplexing that, as mayor, she seems to have abandoned that same diligence in favor of pushing decisions through without sufficient oversight or transparency. Critics have pointed to this contradiction as evidence of a troubling double standard that has taken root under Henyard's leadership. As a trustee, she was an outspoken advocate for fiscal responsibility, but as mayor, her handling of the village's finances seems careless and irresponsible. This contradiction has only become more apparent with the emergence of a recent credit card scandal. Henyard authorized tens of thousands of dollars in purchases on the village's credit card, yet failed to properly document or justify the spending. Even when the finance director claimed that the credit cards had been deactivated the previous year, Henyard defended the use of the cards, sparking even more questions from residents like Baylor, who demanded an explanation. The situation became even more heated when Henyard accused trusted individuals within the village, including members of the board, of misappropriating funds from the village's accounts. Her harsh accusations, targeting the finance director and a fellow board member, escalated the tensions in the room, making it clear that the mayor's accusations were based more on speculation than on solid evidence. At this point, Trustee Beaver calmly intervened, providing concrete proof that it was Henyard's own team who had access to the village's accounts and were responsible for authorizing the questionable charges. Emails from the bank confirmed that the controls over the accounts were under Henyard's purview, not the trustees. Yet despite the mounting evidence to the contrary, Henyard refused to accept responsibility. Instead, she clung to a narrative of victimization, accusing her political opponents of attempting to undermine her authority and tarnish her reputation. Her unwillingness to acknowledge the truth or accept responsibility for her administration's actions only further fueled the growing perception that Henyard was more focused on consolidating her power and protecting her image than addressing the very real issues facing Dolton. Residents began to see that Henyard's focus seemed to be less on improving the community and more on maintaining her own political standing. This pattern of behavior has led to a significant erosion of public trust in her leadership. The growing dissatisfaction with Henyard's approach to governance is evident in the increasing public outcry over financial mismanagement, lack of transparency, and her tendency to dismiss valid criticisms. The situation has escalated to the point where many residents who once supported Henyard are now questioning her ability to lead. They wonder whether her administration is capable of guiding Dolton towards stability, or if she is simply more interested in protecting her personal interests at the expense of the town as public trust in Henyard's leadership continues to erode. The larger questions about her ability to govern remain unanswered. Residents are beginning to wonder if Henyard is truly willing to put the interests of Dolton ahead of her own ego. With the increasing scrutiny surrounding her administration and the widening rift between Henyard and the community, it seems that the future of Dolton's local government is at a crossroads. Whether Henyard can reclaim the trust of her constituents, or if her time as mayor will come to an end, remains to be seen. but the damage to her reputation may already be too great to repair.
The concerns in Thornton Township and a push to regulate what some call out-of-control spending by township supervisors.
The widening divide between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the other trustees has become the most visible and alarming aspect of the ongoing board meetings in Dolton. Henyard, it seems, is asserting her authority in an increasingly assertive and, at times, combative manner, reminding the board that they do not manage the daily operations of the village. This approach has sparked frustration, particularly from trustee Kiana Beller and her colleagues, who advocate for greater openness, transparency, and cooperation. However, Henyard's harsh tactics have only reinforced the impression that she is more concerned with consolidating her own power than with serving the people of Dolton as the tensions escalate. Locals are becoming more vocal in their frustrations over the stagnation caused by the ongoing political bickering. One resident, Daryl, expressed how disillusioned he and others were with the situation, lamenting that the town's main business is being hindered by personal disputes. The media coverage, especially from reporters, has amplified the public's concerns. Many citizens, including Kenks, argue that the village leadership should be working for the benefit of the people, not for personal gain. They point to Henyard's extravagant expenditures and her failure to foster collaboration among the board as major contributing factors to the increasing dysfunction. Henyard, who once prided herself on advocating for transparency and accountability, now appears to be doing everything in her power to avoid it. This shift in her approach has left residents and board members alike questioning her motives and integrity. Beller's tenacity in demanding answers has earned her respect from some, but it has also made her a target for Henyard and her supporters. The rift between Beller and Henyard shows no signs of easing, and the tensions reached a boiling point during a recent meeting for Henyard. The conflict seems to be about maintaining control and power in the face of growing criticism. She has repeatedly dismissed concerns and accusations, portraying herself as a victim of personal attacks. For Beller, the fight is about restoring accountability and transparency to the village's leadership. The clash between the two is just another chapter in what has become a long and ugly saga of municipal politics. Gone awry, the crucial question now is whether Dolton can weather this leadership crisis or whether the village will continue to repeat its past mistakes. The ongoing drama has drawn significant attention, and the people of Dolton are anxiously watching to see how the situation will unfold. With both Henyard and Beller unwilling to back down, the conflict seems set to drag on for the foreseeable future. It's becoming increasingly apparent that the political drama in Dolton is far from over. The board meetings have turned into spectacles of disorder and dysfunction, with each session more heated and chaotic than the last. What's more troubling is how these disputes are exposing much deeper issues with Henyard's leadership: unbridled power, poor financial management, and an inability to collaborate with those who are supposed to be her partners in governance. One of the most revealing aspects of the ongoing conflict is the lack of access to crucial financial records. Trustee Kiana Beller and another trustee, Jason House, have repeatedly been denied access to fundamental financial data that they need in order to make informed decisions. This refusal to provide basic transparency has fueled growing concerns about Henyard's approach to governance. Beller made it clear that her request for the necessary records had been met with resistance for months, making it impossible for trustees to fulfill their responsibilities. Henyard's actions have only intensified the sense that she is working to obstruct transparency at every turn. A particularly striking moment from a recent meeting occurred when the issue of payroll transparency was raised. Beller insisted that, as trustees, they should have access to payroll data, pointing out that this would allow them to see where the money is going. Henyard, however, denied any wrongdoing, claiming that she had never told anyone not to share payroll reports. Her response, though, was far from convincing. When Beller reviewed emails, she discovered that the finance director had, in fact, been directed by Henyard to withhold the payroll information. This discovery caused a collective gasp among the audience, as it confirmed that Henyard had been involved in obstructing access to basic financial data. But payroll transparency was just one small part of a much larger problem within Henyard's administration. During the same meeting, Beller raised the issue of the village's financial mismanagement, particularly the lack of credit card statements provided to the board. It had been months since the board had received any credit card statements, leaving trustees in the dark about how taxpayer money was being spent. Beller demanded to know how the village could approve any charges without knowing what they were paying for. Henyard responded by claiming that the credit cards had been revoked months earlier and that the village was no longer using them. However, Beller insisted on seeing proof, questioning why charges had still been filed despite the supposed deactivation of the card's growing financial mess and lack of transparency, are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Henyard is trying to manage village funds in ways that the trustees argue they never intentionally approved. The fact that she has consistently avoided providing any legitimate documentation to justify these expenses has caused a crisis of confidence among residents and board members alike. The ongoing dispute between Henyard and the trustees has exposed not only the deep divisions within Dolton's government, but also the broader dysfunction that has taken root under Henyard's leadership. Her attempts to silence criticism, block access to critical financial records, and push decisions through without proper oversight have left the village on the brink of a full-blown leadership crisis. Whether Dolton can overcome this crisis, and whether Henyard will remain in power, remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the political drama in Dolton is far from over, and the people of the village are growing more impatient with each passing day.
Many tense moments in tonight's meeting. At times, Supervisor Tiffany Henyard took on her fellow trustees when it came to money and expenses, even accusing some of them of spreading.
The most obvious feature of the ongoing discussions in Dolton is the growing rift between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the other trustees. While Trustee Kiana Beller and her colleagues are pushing for transparency and cooperation, Henyard seems determined to remind the board that they do not handle the day-to-day operations of the village. Her harsh approach has only served to reinforce the perception that she is more concerned with consolidating her own power than in serving the people of Dolton. This has led to rising frustration among residents, who are increasingly annoyed by the lack of progress and the ongoing political squabbles. Residents, like Daryl, have begun to voice their displeasure, with many expressing that Henyard is standing in the way of important tasks getting done. Reporters have also highlighted the widespread belief among citizens that public officials should work for the benefit of the community, not for personal gain. One local, Kenks, stated that Henyard's leadership had only made matters worse, pointing to her extravagant spending and her failure to encourage collaboration within the board. He added, "I thought I was young and innocent, not realizing that no one would let you all take control of me. I didn't do anything, but you folks started this whole mess because of sheer stupidity." Henyard, who once took pride in her efforts to advocate for transparency and accountability, now seems to be doing everything in her power to avoid those principles. While some have praised Beller for her perseverance in pushing for answers, this determination has also made her a target for Henyard and her supporters. The tension between Beller and Henyard has become palpable, and it is clear that this conflict will not be resolved anytime soon. For Beller, the fight is about restoring accountability and trust in the administration, while for Henyard, it is about maintaining control and power in the face of growing criticism. For the residents of Dolton, this is just another chapter in a long and unpleasant saga of municipal politics gone awry. The crucial question now is whether the village can overcome this leadership crisis, or if Dolton will inevitably repeat the mistakes of its past. The political drama in Dolton is far from over, and whether Henyard can hold on to her power or whether her tenure will come to an end remains to be seen. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, Henyard and Beller's ongoing clash has taken on the feel of a reality show, with each new board meeting marked by unprecedented levels of chaos and dysfunction. The arguments between the mayor and the trustees are exposing more serious issues with unchecked power, poor financial management, and an ongoing power struggle that seems to have no end in sight. One of the most troubling revelations from recent meetings is the trustees' repeated inability to access essential financial documents. Beller, along with Trustee Jason House, has repeatedly been denied access to critical financial data that would allow them to make informed decisions. The finance department has made it clear that they need Henyard's approval to release these documents, despite Beller's repeated requests over the past several months. This refusal to provide transparency has left many residents questioning Henyard's motives and whether the mayor is hiding something. One of the most startling moments from a recent meeting occurred when the issue of payroll transparency was raised. The issue seemed simple enough. If trustees are responsible for approving spending, they should be able to see where the money is going, including payroll information. Yet, Henyard denied any wrongdoing. "I've never told anyone not to share payroll reports," she insisted, her voice rising with frustration. "Why would I need to approve something like that?" That's just not true, however. Beller uncovered something troubling in the email she reviewed. Contrary to Henyard's claims, the finance director had explicitly stated that the delay in providing payroll information was due to instructions from Henyard herself. When this revelation was made public, the room fell silent, with the collective gasp of the audience audible as they processed the implications of Henyard's actions. Beller's determination to uncover the truth had exposed a key flaw in Henyard's leadership, raising further questions about the mayor's handling of the village's finances. But payroll access was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Henyard's administration has fostered a culture of secrecy that extends far beyond payroll records. During the same meeting, Beller raised concerns about the lack of credit card statements, pointing out that the board had not received any credit card reports since May of the previous year. Beller rightly argued that if the village was paying bills, they should be able to see exactly what they were approving before making any decisions. If we're paying these bills, we need to see what we're actually approving, Beller asserted. How can anyone approve charges they haven't even seen for themselves? Henyard responded by claiming that the credit cards had been deactivated months earlier and that the town was no longer using them. However, Beller, having reviewed the records, demanded evidence to support this claim. She questioned why charges were still being processed if the cards had supposedly been canceled. The lack of final documentation and the absence of accountability regarding these charges has only intensified the doubts about Henyard's financial management. Beller's insistence on getting to the bottom of these issues has only made Henyard's efforts to deflect responsibility more apparent. Henyard appears to be attempting to use funds in ways that the trustees argue they did not intentionally approve, leading to a significant breakdown in trust between the mayor and the board. The situation in Dolton has reached a boiling point, with rising frustrations among residents and a growing realization that the village's leadership is mired in dysfunction. Whether Henyard can regain control of the situation or whether the board will be able to assert its authority and restore accountability remains uncertain. However, one thing is clear. The ongoing political drama in Dolton is far from over, and the stakes for the village's future have never been higher.